Hey.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
All right, just like New York Times, the New Year's Eve in Times Square when the ball drops. All right. Well, welcome everyone to Successful Indie Game Marketing, how to market your indie game on a $0 budget. First, I'd just like to thank Konsoll for having me here. I'm very excited for all of you for taking the time to listen to me. My name is Emmy Jonassen, or as you said, Emmy Jonassen. And I'm the founder of Indie Game Girl, which is a free online resource I created to help indie game developers market their games. And just a little background about me so you know who I am and know why I'm here. I've been a marketing professional for the past 9 years. I started in traditional advertising, so working for big agencies on everything from travel brands to hotel to food management. And then I switched over to client side to work in technology and e-commerce, specifically video games. And I spent about 4 years marketing a video game engine to the indie game developer vertical. And that's where I first developed a passion for indie games, specifically on why so many great indie games fail. And so I kind of made it my mission during those years while I was marketing that indie game engine and after to figure out why are all these great pieces of art just not succeeding in the market. And what I uncovered was a theme. So many indie game developers are so talented when it comes to production and design, but don't necessarily have the skill set when it comes to marketing. And so that's how Indie Game Girl started, and that's really my passion in life, and that's why I'm here today. So enough about me, let's talk about all of you. First, becoming a successful indie game developer is hard, right? And you guys all know this because you're either in the process of it right now, you're about to become in the process of it, or maybe you've already gone through your first launch. It's hard. It's a lot of hours. It's not a lot of sleep. It's not a lot of pay, hopefully while you're making the game, not afterward. And for a lot of the game developers that I talk to, it's also a really bad diet for a really long time, right? But it's more than just a sacrifice of lifestyle. It's more than just that being hard. Statistically, it's hard as well. And if we look at the statistics say that it's very difficult to become successful. If we look at this, 95% of indie games are not profitable. 80% of them actually operate at a loss. Those are pretty grim statistics. And if we look at iOS, it gets a little bit better. 25%, only 25% of indie developers publishing to iOS have ever, in their entire lifetime, made $30,000 or more in their lifetime. Now, in the States, you can barely survive off of $30,000 for a year. In Norway, it seems like you can barely fill up your gas tank for $30,000, right? But it's not all doom and gloom, because marketing can seriously increase your chances at success. That's the silver lining, and we know this because of so many indie game developers that have been through the process of launching their game and what they tell us from it. I have a couple of examples here, but Joost van Dongen, who's from Ronimo Games, says, marketing is 1/3 of your chance at success. 1/3. And Paul Taylor from Mode 7 Games, he says, indies skew their efforts far too far towards production and away from marketing. And this is one of the reasons why so few games are genuine commercial success. And this is what I was referring to a little bit earlier. When I was doing my research to find out what's going on, I found just that indie developers are so talented and know so much when it comes to production and design, but it's that marketing skill set that they often lack. Robert DeLefebvre from Divergent Games, and they actually just successfully funded a Kickstarter. He says, unfortunately, it's no longer enough to only create great content. In order to differentiate yourself from the masses, you must concoct a structured and coordinated marketing plan. So the big question is, if the statistics are telling us that it's very difficult to become a successful indie game developer, yet all of the experts who have been through the process already and know are saying marketing seriously increases your chances, why do so few indies invest in marketing? And when I say invest, I don't necessarily mean a financial investment or a monetary investment. What I mean is just a commitment to the practice of marketing. And what I believe from talking to so many indies is that it's because indies still believe in a myth, or a lot of indies believe in this myth, right? And the myth is that successful marketing requires a gigantic budget. And I don't blame indies for believing this, because when you have Bungie as an example, who spent $30 million on marketing alone for Halo 3, and even more than that for Halo 4, what are you supposed to believe, right? But it's not true, and there's so many examples out there that disprove it, and I'm going to go over 2 of them. And the first comes from a studio called Dawn of Play, and they made a game called Monkey Labor, which they launched in late 2010 on Apple. Has anyone heard of this game, by the way, or played it? It's a retro-style game, and the team spent about 2 months, 7 people making this game. And when they launched the game on the App Store, they had done very, very little marketing. And after about 3 months since the release, they had a total of 1,000 copies sold. Now, that may seem like a lot, but when you are selling your game for $1.99 on the App Store, and Apple's taking a 30% cut, that equates to about $1,400. And when you've got 7 people for 2 months, the math doesn't quite balance it out. So the development studio was faced with a challenge, and one of the developers stepped up and said, I'm going to start investing in marketing. I'm going to start reaching out to different review sites and different publications and seeing if I can get us published. And that's exactly what he did. He started reaching out, and Touch Arcade picked up the game and wrote a review. 10 days after Touch Arcade wrote that review, 10 other publications picked up this story, and within those 10 days, Monkey Labor sold 6,000 copies. And this is a graph of their sales, and you can see over here, this was the launch of their game. This gigantic spike was when the Touch Arcade article was published, and they sold 6,000 copies within the course of 10 days. So, marketing. Here's another example. This is a small indie team called Hitbox Team, and they published a game, Dust Force. Has anyone heard of this game before?
Yes.
No? Okay, all right. Pretty cool game. So the team spent a little bit longer than Dawn of Play spent on their game. They spent 15 months developing this game. $100,000 total investment in the development of it. Of that $100,000, they barely budgeted anything for marketing, if at all. And the way that they kept their costs low, they actually reached out to a friend, and their friend was managing the marketing all on her own. So she wrote the press releases, she created the trailer videos, and she did all of the press management. And a smart thing that Hitbox Team did was they started marketing their game before their game actually launched. So through all that marketing effort, they were generating interest and awareness for their game before it came out. When their game launched and they lift the embargo on their press releases, they scored over 100 published articles, including in top-tier publications like GameSpot. And within 7 days after launch, they were profitable. And again, if we look at the sales chart here, you can see that giant spike when the game launched, And then 7 days after the launch, because of all this press they got, they netted $44,000 over their initial investment. So hopefully seeing these two examples, plus the countless others that I didn't go over, start to understand and see that you don't necessarily have to spend a lot, if anything, on marketing to get some success, right? But now the question is, where do you start? And so there are 3 steps to having successful marketing. And the first is to create irresistible promotional materials. And what do I mean by that? Irresistible promotional materials are pieces of marketing content that are so alluring that they just compel sharing and discussion. And these are the types of things that you really cannot start your marketing without. So for example, your trailer video, your screenshots are all part of promotional materials. And the reason that you want them to be so irresistible is because when a potential gamer or when someone from the press looks at your trailer video or a screenshot, you want them to have that reaction of, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I have to share this with my Facebook friends. I have to tweet about it. I have to write about it. And that's really what you're striving to do with these promotional materials. So just a quick example. How many people have heard of Castle Story before? Yes. This is a small studio out of Montreal called Serapod Studio. And when this studio started developing Castle Story, they were 2 people, 2 developers right out of school. And after about a year into the game, they really hadn't done any kind of promotional material, nor did they have a really big following. And so one of the developers created this 11-minute tech demo that was just a really cool and unique demo. It was him just speaking to, as he was screenshotting, going through the world, talking about what all the little characters, what their functions are, how he created everything. He posted it to YouTube. A friend posted a link to Reddit, and all of a sudden, the thing just blew up. Within an hour, Serapod Studios had hundreds of emails coming in saying, I love your game, when is this thing coming out, how can I follow you? And that really started this giant member base that this studio now has of about 40,000 people, if you take into account all their different social media channels, their forum, and their development blog. So that's the kind of material you want to start creating, that viral material. So there are 5 must-have promotional materials every single indie developer should have. These are your trailer video, screenshots, a press release, landing page, and a development blog. There are more, but these are the 5 absolute must-have. So let's talk about the trailer video, number 1. Your trailer video is probably your most important promotional material. The reason being that your gamers, your potential gamers, are going to look at this trailer video to determine whether or not they want to buy or download your game. And then press is going to look at it to determine whether or not they want to write an article. There are a couple of best practices, though, with the trailer video. And the first is to keep it short, 90 seconds or less. If it's longer than that, you're really risking losing your audience before they get to the end of the video. Second, you have about 3 to 5 seconds to capture your audience's attention. After that, again, you risk losing them. Music and sound effects, sometimes indies will leave this as an afterthought, but the music and the sound effects really contribute to the engagement of the video. Make sure you think about that as you're working on it. One of the biggest complaints I hear, and I read in my research about trailer videos, is when they don't show any gameplay. Make sure to include in-game footage always. Reviews. If you're coming out with your first game, it can be a little bit hard to get reviews before your game launches, but if you get reviews shortly after the fact, redo your trailer video so you can include them. Reviews really add a sense of authority to your trailer video. And then finally, always end with the next step. Don't leave the end of your trailer video just black, fade to black. Tell people where to buy your game, where to learn more about your game, where to get your game. Now, I have an example up here that I just want to play of a trailer video that I think really captures all of these best practices. I'm sure most of you have heard of Guacamole. Oh, buffering. All right, well, you see the point there. Let's go back. Okay. Okay, we're back on here. Whoops. So you can see how Guacamole really took all of these best practices, right? It was 59 seconds long. You were grabbed immediately from the beginning with that really peppy music and the sound effects. Plus, at the end, we didn't make it all the way to the end, but the last screen has this big Steam logo, so you know exactly where to get the game. Next, screenshots, another really important piece of promotional material. Like your trailer video, this is what gamers and press are really going to look at to determine whether or not they want to buy and download your game or write about it. In addition, press use these heavily in any articles they publish. So a couple of things here. When you're thinking about your screenshots, think about them as you would a piece of art, because they are a piece of art in themselves. Make sure that they're high resolution so that if they're blown up a little bit bigger than a thumbnail, they don't look all pixely. Pay attention to composition on them. Make sure that they're well lit. I can't tell you how many screenshots I've seen, and I'm looking at them, and they just look like a big black box, and you can't see anything that's going on in them. And then finally, make your scene engaging. I think Jonathan Blow's screenshots from The Witness are beautiful, and they're great examples. When you look at this, or at least when I do, I take those extra couple of seconds to look all around and investigate and see what I might have missed the time before. They're beautiful. Number 3, your press release. I'm going to let you in on a little secret, and I apologize if there are any editors or writers in the room, but my experience working with editors and writers has taught me that they don't really like to write. They have so many things going on that they have to cover, and if you're an indie and you don't have a brand presence, they're not going to take the time with you that they would on maybe someone else who's a bit bigger. So your press release is basically going to act as the article where they're cutting and pasting from to making their own article. And that first paragraph is the most important part of your press release, because typically that's all most people are going to read. So that first paragraph really needs to grab someone's attention, and it needs to sum up every important point that you want to get across, including your game's theme. And I have up here an example from a studio from my hometown of Boston called Digibon Games, and I want to read this paragraph to you. I realize it's the second paragraph. I think they can get away with it because their first paragraph is so short. But this says, you dive off a skyscraper, relying on quick reflexes to negotiate the intricate triangles of girders that make up the city. You perform aerial stunts at terminal velocity before parachuting into the arms of your cheering fans. While other skydivers have it easy, you have to earn the adoration of the crowds by gliding within an eyelash of that glass super scraper at 70 miles per hour. That's a really engaging press release. And I read that and I think, I want to go and play this game and understand how to pronounce it too. Second, use quotes. Writers love to make their stories personable, and if they add a quote, it kind of accomplishes that, so make sure you just throw 1 to 2 in your press release. Your company and contact info, this might seem very boilerplate, and it is, but if a writer or editor wants to get in contact with you or learn more about your company, make it easy for them to do so. Just include it in there. Always send your press release with screenshots and your trailer video, just to give writers and editors everything they need to make an article. And then finally, if they republish your press release, include hyperlinked texts. Because once they publish that, and if someone comes and reads it, it's a quick and easy click to go right over to your site or to your game. Next, landing pages. How many of you have a landing page for your game or know what a landing page is? Yes? Okay, cool. So a landing page is a web page, and its sole purpose, the only reason it exists in life, is to convert visitors to customers. That's its only purpose in life. So one of the things that might seem a little counterintuitive, but landing pages should never have any navigation. And the reason being, if its sole purpose is to get people to click this button, all navigation is going to do is take clicks away from that button to your About page or to your Games page, and you don't want to do that. If you want to have any piece of navigation in your landing page, you can have your logo in the upper left-hand corner because it allows people to learn a little bit more about your company, but other than that, just take it off. Next, a grabbing headline. This is the only piece of text someone's probably going to read when they come to your landing page. So make sure that it really encourages them to click on that button down there by giving them a reason, speaking to the core benefit of the game in relation to the market you're speaking to. Social sharing icons as well. This is free marketing. If someone comes to your page and thinks it's really cool, let them share it with their friends by putting Twitter, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn up there. A strong call to action button. This is by far the most important element on this entire page because this is the action you're trying to solicit from people. Make sure that button really stands out from the rest of your page with color and shape and also use of negative space around it. The trailer video we talked about earlier, this is really what encourages potential players. It helps them make the decision whether or not they want to download or buy your game. Make sure it's on there and make sure it's prominent. Same thing with your screenshots. And then finally, if you have testimonials, player testimonials or reviews, make sure to put them on there. It adds authority and clout. And then finally, the contact and the press kit. Make sure you have your contact information on there because it makes it very easy for press to be able to reach out to you and follow up, as well as your press kit so they can get everything they might need. And then finally, your development blog. This is the 5th promotional material. Quick fact about this, companies that have development blogs bring in 55% more traffic than companies that don't. And that's why development blogs are so important. But in order to bring in that kind of traffic, you have to be posting frequently to your blog so people keep coming back. Minimum 1 time per week. More than that is always better. Using images, we're all visual creatures. If it's just a blog filled with text, no one's going to pay attention to it. People like to see images, so use them. Link to your blog from your homepage so that it's really easy to find. And then give visitors a way to follow your blog with an RSS feed, and then also email subscription. And this is a great way, every time you post to your blog, they'll get messaged, so they keep coming back. Social subscription, so that if people want to share it, they can, as with social sharing icons. And finally, promotion at the end of every post. Just like your trailer video, you have your next steps. Use your blog to do the same. At the end of every blog post, put a little promotion for your game and let people know where to get it. Okay, next. Now you have all this beautiful, irresistible promotional content built, so now you get to use it. And the first thing to do is reaching out to the press with it to secure those articles. And the way you want to start, there's so many different publications out there, right? Where do you start? It starts with research. Researching both the publications you should be on and the publications you want to be on. And I distinguish the two because as indie developers, a lot of the times we'll want to get onto those trade publications where our peers are, right? So like the develops of the world, the gameindustry.bizes of the world. However, that's not where your players are going to be. So it's really important to distinguish between those development blogs as well as the blogs like the Joysticks and the Kotakus and the IGNs. Take all of that and put it into a list. I'm very anal, so I use Excel to put mine in, or Google Docs, and I like to have everything organized, but it really works. And then once you have that list done, categorize them into tiers. Tier 1 being like the publications that if you get on, you know you'll just get a ton of downloads from, like your IGNs, to Tier 3, like Bob's Gaming Daily, which isn't going to get you a ton of traffic, but it's still a win. And then you need to find your writer and editor's contact information, right? This may be a little time-intensive, but it's totally free. And the way to do it, you can get almost every single writer's and editor's contact information completely for free right from the game site. Most sites have a link in the footer that just says editorial staff, and you can click on it and get everything you need to know. For example, on Game Informer, Andy McNamara, he's the editor-in-chief. I found his contact information just by going to the footer of Game Informer, clicking on that editorial staff link, and right there I have his Twitter, his Facebook, his Google Doc. And then finally, take all that information and put it back into that spreadsheet. Next, getting in touch. I speak to a lot of indies about this, and it seems the two most preferable ways to do it are through email and also through social media. I have an example of email up here. You can also reach out through social media. But the way to start with email is really developing a template that you can then take and customize on a per site and per writer basis. The most important thing with your template is you really want it to answer the question that every editor has, which is, why would my readers give a shit, right? Like, why would they care about your game? If you answer that really well, be engaging, be short, be to the point, and attach everything they may need, like those screenshots in that trailer video. Thank you notes. This may seem really strange, but thank you notes go over huge in the editor and writer world. I was reaching out to one of the Tier 1 publications, and I didn't really get in contact with anyone, and then all of a sudden I looked the next week, and one of the writers had written a custom article about this game I was promoting. So I emailed him immediately, and I just said, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I think your readers will get a lot of enjoyment out of this. And he wrote me back within an hour, and he said, Emmy, I never get thank you notes from anyone. No one ever thanks writers. And from then on, Even if he was at E3 or any of the big trade shows, if I sent him something, he would either just republish the press release or write something. So thank you notes are a great way to develop that rapport with a writer. Oh, and handwritten ones go over huge. They're more so than email, because no one really writes letters anymore. And finally, keep in touch. You spent such a long time developing this relationship. Don't lose it. Maintain that touch. It's really easy, a couple of ways. Just say hello to the writer every now and again through social media, or just drop them a little hello from an email. Or if they're writing constantly, put a little comment on their article every now and then, just so that you stay top of mind. Okay, and then the third step, as you're working with press and media, you want to start building that fan base. And there are a couple of things there. The first, you need to make your game easy to discover. Don't make it hidden. Let fans discover it easily. So set up your social media accounts and post them daily. Have to do at least 4: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google+. Those are the big ones you want to be on every day. Become active in forums and blogs and other online publications or sites that your fan base might be in. Start to get known, start to build your online presence. And then participate in game jams and other events. This is a great way, especially if you're really good, this is a great way to get attention. Get involved with your local game development community. As you are right now, your local game development community has a vested interest in you, so they already want to help you. And most of the time, it's free. And finally, start a crowdfunder. A lot of indies use crowdfunders not only to get funding, but just to start building that online presence. Once you start getting visitors to come visit you, right, you need to convert them into fans. And the way to do that is through content. If you offer people constant engagement or useful tips, they'll start following you and they'll keep coming back. Clearly, visitors are already interested in your game, so posting game and company updates is a great way to continue that interest. But you can also post about other things. Post about your experiences. Say if you're looking at in-game advertising, right? And you now know all this about in-game advertising. You've gone through the experience. Post about it. That's the kind of information that people will love and they'll keep coming back for. Same thing with opinions. If a new game comes out in your genre, post an opinion piece about it. It's another good piece of content. Interesting articles. You don't always have to post original content that you write. If you feel like your audience is going to get value out of an article you recently read, you can also post that. And then finally, the occasional random or funny post. People love to get a sense of personality from your game studio or from the people that work in it. Post like a funny picture of your cat that, people love cats. Or post like a new character that you're working on. And finally, just like with the media, you want to nurture the relationships that you're building with your fans. Always put your fans first, and they will love you for it. So if they comment on things, if they ask you questions, put them first and make sure you always get back to them in a timely fashion and make it personalized so they feel like you care. Initiate and engage in discussion. Don't just be posting all the time, Reach out and ask your fans how they're doing, ask them questions, and try to start that dialogue. Thanking fans privately, but more so publicly, really helps. People love being thanked, especially when you're thanking them and letting everyone else know that you're thanking them. Fans also like to feel like they're part of the experience. So asking them for their input and then actually incorporating that input into your game is a big win. And finally, you're always going to have trolls. There are always trolls in the world. Lots in Norway here in the mountains. But taking those trolls, it takes a real indie game developer, someone who's very savvy and has their handle on their fan base, to take that troll and turn them into one of your biggest fans. So always respond to criticism in a thankful and professional way. Oh, you didn't like that character? Well, thank you for letting me know that, but what are your thoughts on how I could improve it? And then maybe trying to take some of that and incorporate that. And that's all I have. Thank you very much. Talk. Any questions?
Okay, we have quite some time for questions, actually. So if anybody has questions for Emmy, please raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. Har vi lyd?
No?
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah. I'd like to ask, what's your opinion? Is there any such thing as too early to market? Example is, in my opinion, the game Fez got a lot of attention too early.
Mm-hmm.
And created a lot of hostility amongst its fans because it took a lot of time. How much time before releasing the game should you start marketing?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, and I think the most important thing to do before you start any kind of marketing is put together a roadmap for your game. So what I'll see often is that, exactly that kind of scenario, indie developers know that they have to market beforehand because you want to generate that hype, but then they underestimate how long the development is going to take, especially if they submit something maybe to the App Store, it comes back as rejected, they have to develop more, submit it again. So coming up with that roadmap before you start any marketing is very important because you don't want to start early. And I'd say in terms of starting, there's no set amount of time, 1 month or 1 month and 3.9 days before you launch. But that roadmap will really help you determine, okay, if I know that I'm going to launch on this date, then I think I can market, 6 months beforehand and have enough content to post every day. And so, and that my game will be accepted then, or if it's not accepted then, maybe a month later, so that I'm not stringing fans along for too long. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for a great speech.
Thank you for
It's
listening.
really inspiring. It's along the same vein as the previous question. It's about graphics, assets, screenshots, videos. We've had trouble with releasing screenshots early, which we want to do, but graphical polish comes late in the development process, and then we have journalists, even though we do a lot of those things, actually, I'm very happy to say we do a lot of those things you're saying, with the press kits and all that, but you still have lazy journalists that kind of just Google up your game and find a screenshot half a year old, and it's not what you want to push to the audience at that time. So my question really is, do you have any bright ideas on how to handle that situation? I mean, to release videos and press screenshots early, but still how to kind of keep the journalists from reusing them when you want them to post something more pretty?
Yes, I've encountered this before as well, and I found that probably the best way to handle something like that, so for a journalist, at that time, it's okay to use that screenshot, but later on, no, it's not okay to use that screenshot, right? That's what you're...
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay. The best way to handle that, I find, with journalists is to stay in very close contact with them throughout the lifetime of your game, so that you're not just contacting them at that point when it's released and the next point when the next article comes out, but you stay in contact with them, even twice a month or once a week, saying to them, okay, here are some updated, so that they're always in the know as to what they should be using and when they should be using it.
So it goes along, talking to them, of course.
Yes.
Because it's something you said about making the local awareness and being in the local community. I mean, like my example comes from releasing early screenshots to the local newspapers and things like that, which is very good for financing, for instance, and getting a local hype and all those things. But then a problem with the internet is that international journalists, they can find these screenshots later. And,
right.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Talk to them.
Absolutely. And it's hard to control with journalists that you don't have a relationship with. But I've always also been in the scenario where a journalist maybe I don't have a relationship with pulls some of the old screenshots down and then publishes something. In that case, you can reach out to that journalist directly, and since they've already published an article about you, they have an interest in your story, and they're a little bit more eager to respond to your email. And you can always say, hey, great article, thank you so much for publishing it. I just wanted to send you some updated screenshots so your readers can know that the game has progressed since then. Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is, I've been looking into marketing, so I've been checking out YouTube as a marketing strategy. I'm not sure what your input is on. Like the way I've seen working best is not looking for the biggest one, or the bigger ones, because they have so much email spam and so much they can't control it. But if you look for smaller YouTubers that might know someone that knows someone, the word of mouth. What do you have any opinions on that, on how you can do it, or if it's smart or risky, or somewhere in that lines?
To have YouTubers cover your game? Yeah, I think you're right. I think reaching out to the smaller ones is a good starting point. You're not going to have as much volume in terms of views, but it's a good place to start. I think, again, it goes back to developing the relationships, right? So if you start to develop the relationships with a smaller YouTuber and maybe they have their network, you can work with them to network out to their network as well. And I really do. I think that's absolutely the way to go. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, have you ever experienced someone who's tried to send out press releases of their game and have trailers, maybe a tech demo, and then a reviewer or a YouTube personality has kind of bricked it with bad reviews and stuff like that? And then, what would you do to fix that or help the issue or whatever?
That actually does happen quite a bit. I'm sure we've all seen that example before. And unfortunately, because there's freedom of the press, you can't stop someone from expressing their opinion. However, I would treat that in the same way you might treat a troll that reaches out directly to you. And you kind of have to weigh your battles too. But the way I've always handled that is I reach out to that person directly, maybe in a private message first, so that it doesn't become so public. You kind of have to gauge it for yourself and say, I really appreciate your opinions here, and maybe if you're working on the next version of the game, or if you're planning on updating it, say to them, I'd really like to send you maybe an early copy, or I'd really like to get more of your feedback to understand what about the game you didn't like, because I'd like to consider that in my next version. So trying to take their feedback, respect them for it, and then turn them around on your game. Because, in that scenario, if you're paying them that kind of attention, they might flip their opinion on you, even if they don't flip the opinion on the game, and be much more willing to write a positive review for you, maybe with your next version, or if you're releasing bug fixes, or your next update.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you for a wonderful presentation, and the slides I also hope will be on the webpage so we can look them over afterwards.
Yeah,
A bit
absolutely.
of follow-up here with regards to hostile media, because it's been kind of trend lately with a lot of angry YouTubers and presentations and angry media, etc. And that seems to have quite a following. It's like there's a trend that people want to slaughter games and get their clicks from that. And you say you have to take a nice and benign approach to them, but a lot of them are just trolls, and you can't really change them. And sunlight doesn't help, like in the fairy tales. Are there any other approaches to deal with that, except try to balance it with positive media? Because I see this trend is kind of growing at the moment.
I mean, the number one approach to dealing with that is obviously creating a great game, right? So you really want to focus on, I mean, seriously though, but like creating that great game. But you're always going to have those people that just get their kicks from being really nasty online. And if I always take the approach of, okay, everybody's good in the world and maybe they have a reason, and I like to reach out to them and try to get that feedback and see if somehow I can flip them around. If you can't flip them around, unfortunately, there's not much that you can do other than taking your fan base, paying attention to them, nurturing them, and building that fan base up as much as you can, as well as getting reviews from other credible sources that are positive and pointing to that. Everyone's going to have differing opinions, but say you have a troll out there who's being really, really nasty, but then maybe IGN gives you a 9 out of 10. Like you have that credible source that you can always point to as well.
Yeah, because it also seems like, for instance, with the fish blow up, that it gets under people's skin as well. There's a constant barrage of negative feedback that you get from trolls. And then one thing are the anonymous trolls, but also basically people who are making a living out of being a troll. So
right, and that discredits them.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gets to the point where people look at those trolls and they know, even though you're nervous because they're saying bad things about your game, if they're so over the top, other people are going to look at them and think this person has no credit. Why should I believe them when IGN or Kotaku is like giving this game great reviews and other sources are giving it great reviews? So, but unfortunately, some of it you just can't control. There's always going to be mean people out there.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question down here. It's been waiting for a bit.
I was just, well, first of all, thanks for a lot of concrete and sort of actionable input that we can do. But one of the games that I follow most closely, sort of in the indie scene, is Limbo. And of course, I've played early versions of their game several times. And at the last time I did that, I said, okay, this is great. Now you guys have to like set out more stuff because you have that trailer that's been out there for years, and suggested a lot of the things that you've had on there. They just said, no, it's a secret. We want it to be like word of mouth. It's something special. People will find out, and friends will tell them. And I was like, what? Are you insane? But what about your sales? I mean, you're going to be on Xbox, and people don't even know that yet. You're going to be on the PlayStation, and you just told me I can't say that to anyone. But it doesn't make any sense. And how would you explain that they then ended up being one of the biggest sellers on Xbox, on the PlayStation, and also on PC in this segment? You have any thoughts on that?
Well, if you start off, so that particular style of marketing really only works for people that already have a presence and a following. So if you start out as an indie developer and no one knows who you are and you decide to be all secretive from the very beginning, when you release your game, you're just going to hear crickets for the most part. But if you have a following already, so people are already interested in your game, right, and you don't do that much marketing, maybe you do a couple of teasers, but maybe in Limbo's case, really not anything. The name brand alone and the recognition is going to help you a lot. I don't really suggest to anyone to do that style. I know that it works, but there's only very rare instances where it does, so I don't recommend something like that. But again, the only way it's going to work is if you have the brand power from before that carries you through to the next time. Yeah, sure.
Okay, we had a few hands over here.
Yeah, I was wondering if you agree that all publicity is good publicity, that you can turn the bad publicity you get from like trolls and stuff like that, like the publicity they actually give you by making a good product, that you can turn that into more sales because people learn about your game.
I don't know if I agree that all publicity is good publicity. I think a lot of people say that, but I think there's been instances where negative publicity can be negative publicity. However, I think that getting exposure is better than getting no exposure. And if you have a game that you know is good, that you believe in, and say if some troll out there says something nasty about it, but your game is really good, and that spreads the word, yeah, that helps. You don't want to aim for negative publicity ever, but sometimes it can increase your exposure and get your name out there. Yeah.
Anyone else? We still have time.
Thank you for your speech. It was really good. If you had some limited budget, what was the first thing you would use it for? Marketing.
The first thing I would use it for is if I didn't have resources in-house that could create like what I call irresistible promotional materials, I'd probably spend it on reaching out to a graphic designer or maybe a video editor to make my trailer video or screenshots. If I had money left over from that, I'd probably spend it on some kind of user acquisition to bring visitors, to get just eyeballs onto my game. So I've worked a lot with Google AdWords and different PPC campaigns, and sometimes that can be a really great way, just getting those eyeballs onto your page to spread the word. I think that can be a good investment in money. It can get expensive, so you have to pay very close attention to keyword research as well as what you're paying per click. But I think that can be an effective tool to drive traffic.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's the last question of today. Thank you, Emmy.
Okay.
I know that this is something that...
Thank you.
I know that everyone here is going to use at least some of what you showed us today, so thank you so much. Remember, if you've signed up for Emmy's workshop later today, it starts at 2, right after lunch, and it's just down the hall and to the left, I think. Ask the minions, they will show you.